All right, George. So one of the concerns for some of the bears is the fact that we have more than a billion outstanding shares. Now, Nick Link has said the goal is to get under 1 billion outstanding shares. So try to connect the dots between that and the share lockup. You shared some speculation with me before. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so obviously they have not announced any details officially yet, and we're still hoping to hear details on the share buyback, which I think will also be helpful in reducing the outstanding shares. But from their words in the last press release discussing the share lockup, they said that participating shareholders may receive a consideration percentage in ILUS shares, which offers the opportunity for these shares to be converted for shares in Emergency Response Technologies, ERT, or any other ILUS subsidiary where legally possible. Now, I believe that what they're going to do is after we have our shares locked up with them, that they're going to give us an opportunity, and I'm just using this as an example, but let's say that they give you the opportunity to trade in 3 ILUS shares for 1 ERT share. Now, the value of the ILUS shares right now at 8 cents is approximately 24 cents for those 3 shares. And the speculation on the ERT shares being that it'll have a much lower between 400 and 500 million shares, and then of course a $500 million valuation plus, or even 100 million shares, where we don't know exactly where it's going to be. But that the expectation is if they were able to trade 3 ILUS shares for 1 ERT share, this is going to have a double effect. The first thing is it's going to be able to reduce a bunch of ILUS shares, and then those would actually be taken out of the outstanding shares and just retired because you would have been swapping them for the ERT share. And so just using that math, they could retire 300 million ILUS shares for just 100 million ERT shares, which both reduces the outstanding shares for ILUS. But in addition to that, it doesn't dilute the ERT shares. Now, because we know from the graph that they presented in the 10-12G that they just released, that there's going to be future subsidiaries, one for defense, one for the urban mining. And so when they start adding these, I'm hoping for Vera drones myself, that once they add these, just by adding 100 million shares with the same math that I just, the speculative math that I just shared at a 1-for-3 ratio, that by issuing 300 million shares, and we'll say Vera drones, the Millennium, MSGP, defense, and ERT, that they could reduce the outstanding shares for ILUS by 900 million shares just doing a 1-for-3. Now, even though this is just speculation, and obviously, this would be an opportunity for shareholders, not an obligation. And we have to wait for them to issue the details of this. But this is what I thought their plan was from the get-go, because they told us about the share lockup many, many moons ago, it seems now, at least a year ago. And so I am of the strong belief that the people that lock up these shares are going to find themselves in the advantageous position to be able to trade them for much, much more value instantaneously into, again, ERT or Vera or one of the other subsidiaries. Now, one of the other aspects to this that I find very fascinating is once they have the share lockup, we are not allowed to discuss what those subsidiaries are going to be. And so there's been a lot of speculation that Vera's not on the table anymore or this and that. But the company's been very good about telling us after a certain point which deals had fallen through and that they were not pursuing them anymore. And Vera was acquired, I think, in February of 2021. And yet we have not heard anything except for the fact that they were renegotiating, which tells me that it's still on the table. So I am just besides myself waiting for these details to come out for the share lockup, and still plan on, assuming that the details are good, approximately locking up 90% of my shares, because this is going to be a huge benefit to the people that support ILUS by locking up their shares. But it's also going to be a huge benefit to anyone who does not lock up their shares, as I think they're going to use this to knock down the outstanding shares by at least 50%.
And I think you're absolutely on the right path. And there's a couple things that I want people to remember. All right. Don't forget about WSFT and QIND. That might not be the last special purpose vehicle, last SPV that they do. They said that they might utilize that again. That's going to be another great opportunity to get in on the ILUS conglomerate. And in regards to, like you said, ERT, there are going to be so many other subsidiaries that come out that you're going to have your pickings. That's the truth. And lastly, I should say, let's think about the fact that this is going to be a win-win situation for people that lock up their shares and people that just want to retain their ILUS shares. For me personally, I'm probably going to lock up about 100,000 shares, give or take, maybe more, maybe less. But like you said, I want to see what they have to offer. I can't wait for them to come out with more information. And by the way, to all of you there, the minute they give us information about the share lockup, I'm going to share that on this channel and do a step-by-step process. I'm going to use TD Ameritrade when I do that step-by-step process with you guys. So that way, if you need to learn to do it, this is my first share lockup, so we can learn this together. But I think that they're going to give us a lot of opportunities. There already have been a lot of opportunities. For those of you that own QIND, I mean, you're getting in right before, what is it, Jordan? It's a $150 million acquisition, is it? Or is it 300? Yeah, so we get 51% of that, if I'm correct. So it's a $150 million acquisition. So, I mean, the opportunities are endless with this company. And by the end of 2023, ILUS should be valued. The revenue should be about 1 billion. And that's not to say, we're going to see what happens with the share price, the share structure. That should be substantially lower. That outstanding share count should be substantially lower. So these guys are setting themselves up and the shareholders up for major, major success. And they are going to do right by us, in my personal opinion.
Yep. And then the other really nice thing too, and we've discussed it, and I think we touched on it in another video, is the incentives are going to be tier based. So the people that lock up larger amounts of shares, and of course, again, we don't know what those levels are, but we'll just use, say, maybe 10,000, 100,000, and 1 million, is what I was assuming, and like I said, this is all speculation, but what I was assuming is, for somebody who locks up 10,000 shares, then they would do a 1-for-1 swap. It would be, you would get 1 share of ERT for every, 10 shares of ILUS that you locked up. And then if you were at the 100,000 share lockup, then for every, 5 shares of ILUS you locked up, you get 1 share of ERT. And then potentially if you locked up 1 million shares of ILUS, then it could even go as low as 1-for-1. And, these ratios are really, arbitrary at this point, because I'm just making them up just to use as an example. And they'll obviously spell all that out when they actually give the real details. But it's very, very exciting. And it's the bears and trolls are really running out of things to say about ILUS at this point. They just keep proving over and over again that they're growing and building value. And I cannot wait to see the details that they finally post for all of the long-term shareholders and all the incentives and extra things that we're going to be getting in the future.
I'm actually looking up what Rev's share price is right now, just because I'm curious. All right. So the Rev Group, New York Stock Exchange, $13.51. Now, some of you are probably saying, why are you looking that up? I'm looking that up because of this. All right. The IPO is going to be for ERT. Okay. The CEO of ERT is Dan Peters. All right. Dan Peters was the president of Rev Fire Group. So if you think that you're just going to try and linger around a $1 to $2 share price just for the sake of being on the NASDAQ, and there's a lot of speculation that we're going to go on the New York Stock Exchange with this one, they're looking to get in the the double-digit dollar range. Dan Peters isn't coming on board to do a rinky-dink company. That's not what they're trying to do. And actually, when we weren't in a bear market, when we were not in a recession, that was actually in the $20 range, that share price. So if you are hesitant to lock up your shares for ERT, I would say I wouldn't be personally, because I know Dan Peters' experience. So I think that is a very, very, very wise decision to lock up a portion of the shares. Like I said, I'm going to lock up. Originally I said 50,000. I'm leaning towards locking up more, because the long-term value is going to be huge, especially when you get these shares now in a recession, in a high inflation period, in a bear market. It's a win-win situation, and it really is an opportunity of a lifetime. Take advantage of it.
Absolutely. Yep. And, like Nick Link has said numerous times, that they don't want to be a little fish in a big pond. And so, we all assumed, and I think quite incorrectly now, but we'll still have to wait and see, that the plan was initially for ILUS to try to uplist to the NASDAQ at $2, which is the lowest dollar amount with different criteria. But the more I see what they're doing behind the scenes and the pivot they made to the larger acquisitions, and speeding up the process from becoming a $1 billion revenue generating company in 2026 to 2023, that it's absolutely, in my opinion, going to be, them trying to get on the NASDAQ is at $4 or $5 as opposed to the $2. And the best is just beginning. There's so much more to happen. We've got the revenues coming November 15th, the annual shareholders meeting at the end of January. And yeah, it's just a very exciting time to be able to buy so many shares at so cheap.
Jord, this is awesome speculation. I'm getting excited, and I know you are getting excited. Dude, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks so much for having me. It's nice to talk in person, whereas nuance is usually lost when we're texting back and forth on the official ILUS Discord.
And guys, listen, I'm going to be picking Jord's brain on some of the other trades that he's made and how he has had a lot of success thus far. And believe it or not, this guy is really heavy into real estate and he's a wealth of knowledge. Listen, like, share, and subscribe. And remember, there is more that binds us than breaks us. You guys have a great night. Peace.